So, as I just mentioned, Michael's out today. Let me drop what I hope is the right link into the notes here if anybody needs it to get to our agenda, which doesn't have too much exciting on it. The people who managed to show up right now are clearly not the people who need this clarified, but if anyone is not US based, this meeting is currently running at a time that feels an hour earlier to you than it usually feels. And as soon as you change to daylight savings in your country, it will feel like the normal time again. So it will be back at 4:30 UTC, but right now it's 3:30 UTC. So that's the public service announcement of the day.
Awesome.
And I'm supposed to push. I actually read the notes. I'm supposed to turn on my gallery view so we can see most of your lovely faces, except Dan. It's very sad. Your photo doesn't show up when we do the recording. Dan's always in top secret stealth mode. We never get to see him.
No, I'm just always on my phone, so
okay.
You're taking a phone call while so you're accessing this call via your phone.
Yeah, so you'd be looking at my ear.
Anyhow, yes, I haven't officially said it, but welcome to the weekly sync of the IPFS community working group. I'm your fearless leader for today. So let's start, since we don't have other specific stuff on the agenda, let's just do a quick round of like what I've been up to, what I'm about to be up to. So I will get us started on that. I'm very excited to announce, although I can't announce anything substantive, that we did lock down our venue and dates for offline camp, which we have not launched yet because we have some work to do before we can make that happen. But if you want to stay updated on that, there's a link in the meeting notes to the sort of interest forum where you can let us know that you're interested and also kind of vote on places you'd like to see camp go in the future. That's an event for people who are interested in the offline first development methodology, community, UX community, etc. And there is often a lot of talk at offline camp about, it's certainly not exclusively about decentralized web, but there's usually some talk about sort of decentralized web and offline first and how they overlap with like local communities, etc. And if this is sparking your interest, then you should also be in our local offline collaboration working group led by Molly. I guess I'll add a link to that after.
Yay.
Now that I've mentioned it, I have to. So stuff I'm working on is a lot of the same. I'm still working on the file API tutorial for Proto School, which will walk people through how you can actually share a file and not just some silly JSON, some kind of JavaScript object. So I'm working on that. The structure is built so you can upload a file to work with, and then I'm working on the content of those actual lessons. And then I also hope today to make repos for many places in China and Taiwan, which I would mispronounce many of, so I won't try, but they're in your notes. We still have lots of interest coming in for leaders of chapters, which I will be excited when we have more content so more people can lead the events that are as intended, those walking through tutorials together. I don't know what else is new with me. I think that's the gist of what I've been focused on. Portia, are you ready to give a little update?
Yes. So I went to and presented at ECC, Ethereum Community Conference in France. That was pretty cool. I created a test finally for the alert bar. It's back in a PR. Yeah, I probably should talk more about ETH community conference. It was interesting. Yeah. I don't know, it was really nice being around different people who are working on distributed projects. It's not just Ethereum. And the best part about like going to Ethereum or blockchain or offline conferences, you meet a ton of people who are using or who are implementing IPFS or libp2p. So that was really good because I was able to meet some folks who are willing to actually talk, who are willing to talk during the IPFS weekly call. That's something I've been working on as well. And I've secured several speakers. And this is partly due to the fact that I was able to like go to the conference. I also, as I mentioned, gave a talk about IPFS. I think it went okay. And beyond EFCC, I am working on the outline. I'm outlining the install section of IPFS.io. Part of what we do in a community team is we're looking at ways that we can structure, audit our docs. It's something that we talked about earlier this quarter, but we didn't really get a chance to flesh out a plan. So what we're doing is for the short term, I'm actually putting in instructions on how you actually get started with like installing and using IPFS. That's right there on the landing page. Because I know for me,
clever.
I don't know about clever. Helpful is probably a better adjective. So you don't have to go rustling around in the GitHub repos for the basic CLI commands. I need that to be checked by Michael and also the design team because it is an extra section on the site, and I do not know what the graphics and design will look like. So that's something that I'm actively working on. And I am also looking for a docs writer for Q2. So if you know anyone who writes technical docs and they're interested in working with us and collaborating with us, let us know. What is next? Community OKRs for Q2. So we're actively looking towards what are our goals for Q2 and what are our goals for 2019. That is a work in progress. And as I mentioned before, we're looking for a docs writer. I will end this with, we do have some speakers for IPFS weekly call, but once again, if you have something that you'd like to present, if you're working with IPFS, if you're learning about IPFS and making educational content, please let us know, and we would love to have you in the call.
What would be your favorite way for someone to tell you that they were interested? How should they reach out to you?
Favorite, that's a good question. I will put it in notes. You just email me at Portia@protocol.ai and I'll just put that in the notes. So that's it for me.
Cool. Dan, do you have something exciting to say? You came off mute.
Yeah, sure. So actually, I might be the first to bite on that offer, Portia. I might be interested in that. So offline, you and I should coordinate on what that might look like. But yeah, so in terms of what I've been up to, unfortunately, it's been outside of the IPFS world for the most part recently. But I am excited to I now have at least one other person on the next meetup that we'll be running here. And I'm going to be reaching out to you, Jim, specifically to do an overview of related protocols and then to jump right in as to why IPFS is the shining star everyone should be looking at. So that's on the near horizon in the next week or two. And then beyond that, I think I just had one question. And I have been seeing a whole bunch of new, especially Asian groups that are joining our community. But I seem to be one of the only like general local organizers who shows up for this meeting in particular. And I'm wondering, do you think it'd be useful to reach out and say, hey, you guys, what would be like best for you to come on, and would it be useful for you to come on and talk with us? I don't know if we thought about that at all.
Yeah, I mean, I think we should make it more obvious. There's a resources document that I don't know that I mentioned the call in, which is there's like the sort of setup instructions for setting up your chapter, and then there's a separate document in the README that's, or like a different README, different Markdown file that's about like how to get stickers, resources that you can use as you're moving along. So I can check that and see whether the call is mentioned in there. I do think that the timing is awkward. I think when Kevin joins us, it's probably close to midnight there, but we should definitely kind of issue the invitation more widely.
Right.
We will be kind of focusing on Proto School as a distinct thing from the IPFS community working group in Q2 and moving forward. It will be sort of we think, a top level project at PL. So I don't know whether there will be sort of a call more specific to that, or if I'll still kind of pop in here and have this as the place to chat. But it is a good idea to make that surface that a bit more, that this call exists.
Right. And as you pointed out, like the time zone might just be wrong for getting most of our Asian counterparts. So it might be worth looking at a different time.
Yeah, although we're already up against morning daycare drop off in California for the head of our team at the moment. But yeah, we can circle back to it later.
Yeah. Okay.
Anything else in your world, Dan, that we should know about?
For now, no, I think it's only relevant stuff anyway.
How about you, Jim? Anything new and exciting?
Not much. This week I've been working on a new pinner backend for the PeerPad, and I'm trying to use IPLD and IPFS to store the actual backup snapshots of the PeerPad documents that people collaboratively type together. And I've got it sort of working. So it's sort of interesting because I was like using some of the knowledge I learned from the Proto School tutorial for IPLD. But I also had to store files, so I haven't seen the files module yet. So I'm curious to see if it promotes the same way I sort of figured out how to do it. I actually found it quite puzzling going through. There's a lot of APIs and a lot of options on the APIs, and it was not actually obvious to me, given all the available APIs, which one I should be using. So I think there's going to be a lot of value having the tutorial, and this is the one you should be using. So
do you mean like between MFS and the not quite MFS things that are specific to how to work with files?
You can put in like file add, or you can do like MFS. You can create an MFS thing and add things to it, but then you can also add a block and get a CID for that. I ended up using just the add API, and then but it doesn't give you, it just gives you back the multi-hash, but it's actually a multi-hash of a CID. So then I wrapped it in the CID thing and then gave that to the IPLD the same way it's using the existing tutorial, and that seemed to work. But I also had to convert it to CID version 1. So it was just it was a little puzzling actually, just to figure out how to do it. And I'm going to get my code reviewed and make sure that I'm actually doing it the right way, because I'm not even certain that I'm doing it the best way.
Yeah, I think any of that where you run into confusion about the docs and like what is the right choice for the right use case would be helpful to surface to like Alan Shaw, for example, who's been helping me try to understand what's going on there. And I know they're looking to get more clarification around that. And then maybe it's something that would also come out of Portia looking into like what documentation exists and what doesn't, and where the gaps are. And if there's this missing gap of like, well, if you want to do this thing, use this. And if you want to do that thing, use that. My guess is maybe that hasn't been very explicitly stated. So.
And then another thing that happened was there's been an inquiry if we'd be willing to teach an online workshop for how to build like a DApp, decentralized app, on using IPFS tools. And
an inquiry from who?
I can't say, but
Okay.
we don't really have one ready to go like in our group. So we have some like peer-based tech tutorials, but those aren't specifically IPFS things. So I mean, it pairs well with IPFS. It uses libp2p and things, but we don't have like a ready to go like tutorial. This is how you build a simple little app using the IPFS stack. And I'm not even sure if that really exists. There probably is something somewhere.
We have a lot of scattered apps, and we have a lot of scattered, like for instance, PeerPad and such, but we don't have like an explicit, this is how you build a DApp using IPFS. And that's something that we're talking about. And it's something that we are actively working on, is like after one learns the basics of IPFS and IPLD, the next step would be for them to build something. That's something, and I'm glad that you're mentioning it, because that's something that we're trying to push forward.
Yeah, like for me, I even had just basic questions because we support so many different platforms. Like, would it be more useful to show somebody how to use the server side tools and use, say, like build something in a web browser that uses the GSS or the GS HTTP client to talk to it using the API and just do server client server type of thing? Or would you want to build something completely in the browser? Or like, there's a lot of different ways you can build something that is, you know, an IPFS app. So like if we were to present a tutorial, I'm not sure what I would think you'd want to do something that exposes at least some of the API. So
When I think of IPFS, like I think of it more as the stack of part of a DApp. And if we can show like, all right, you're building a distributed app, and exactly how are you using IPFS? Like for instance, for file storage, and then you might be using other technologies. I think that would be useful and representative of how like other companies and other projects are using IPFS. Because IPFS is just one out of many of decentralized technologies, but we would just like focus on the IPFS part.
mm-hmm.
For like files.
Yeah. There's a
But
lot.
these are really good suggestions. And if you can just like, if offline, we can just talk, Jim, like really soon, because I am like taking these ideas and I'm collecting them and it's informing like our next stage of like tutorials for users.
Okay.
And just to clarify, like some of that content, if you get to something that's really advanced, if you need to be messing around on the command line to make something work, is not stuff that would necessarily be supported by Proto School at the moment. There will always be content that's not appropriate for Proto School and that would be better suited in different formats. So we can, as we hear ideas, we can think about what's right for Proto School and what's right for other methodologies of teaching.
Yeah, I
Right.
think in this case, the request was specifically for like, I mean, I don't know the time length, maybe like half hour, but like, or an hour, like sort of like a streamed webinar type of thing. So I imagine that you'd cover like installing command line tools if you needed to. And but yeah, I think that'd be a good thing to have. I just think it'd be challenging to target it correctly.
Really noted, and like I said before, this is the kind of feedback that's really useful for us so that we can help our users after they learn the basics of IPFS, take that knowledge and build something with it. So we're looking at something like even UPort, like UPort deals with identity. And if you look, they have their docs, and they also have like example apps that you can use using their API.
Anything else people wanted to chat about before we go? All right. Well, nice to see your faces or photos of your faces as usual. And we'll see you next week at what is 3:30 UTC for right now, until we get back to April and most of the world moves itself around, and then it'll be back to 4:30 UTC. All right. Have a lovely week, everyone.
Awesome. Thank you. Bye.